Last time, Torwain flattened revenants like bowling pins. The Wickwood champion blew open the dwarven centre. Baridoc observed the battle. Autocratics regaled us with his wisdom. And the Undead captured an objective. Let's get on with turn 5. Initiative on turn 5 goes to the Dwarves, but the Undead get a strange event on double 3s. Baridoc and the Hammerheart Oathsworn pause momentarily as their guts begin to cramp. There must have been something in their food this morning that even their rock-hard dwarven constitutions are struggling with. As they begin to sweat and go pale, well, paler, their activation stat increases by 2. Baridoc really needs to get a food taster and cupbearer. Nevertheless, they grit their teeth and charge into the rear of the Leviathan Guard. Their charge flattens the rear rank of the Revenants, bowling 6 from their feet to be trampled beneath iron-shod boots. The Revenants are taken completely off guard and fail to strike down even a single sweaty dwarf, their heavy armour proving impervious. 3 additional Revenants are cut or clubbed down as the Oathsworn's momentum wanes, and Baridoc reforms them for the next clash. Victorix wheels his chariot and surges towards the flank of the Westslope spears. As he thrusts out with his spear, his archer companion looses point-blank arrows, and 4 dwarves fall as the chariot passes by.
How do you kill it?
The spear dwarves thrust back, but unused to these strange contraptions, their attacks are fouled by wicker or unfeeling bone. Victorix circles around to attack again, and the dwarves rally to Murderden Goldenrock's shouts, maintaining good order as they are harried on all sides. The Wrath of Stormpeak, led by Vorich Grimhelm, charge into the archway once more.
The embodiment of Stormpeak's pride. We smash shields and spears aside. We scatter skeletons left and right. Flimsy bodies no match for dwarven might.
9 skeletons fall in total, with not a single dwarf in exchange. But once more, the unyielding nature of the skeletons allows them to clog the archway with bodies and force the dwarves back. No, it's alright, Cat, you're not in the way at all. Sigh. The Wickerwood soldiers advance into a position to threaten the flank of the Westslope archers, before the Wickerwood champion charges ahead. Infused with unnatural vigour, the champion uses Blade Storm and carves deep into the archer's ranks, felling 4, his sword a blur in skeletal hands. The remaining archers are unable to get close enough to strike the champion for fear of his deadly blade, though the sight of the Dwarven King hardens their resolve as they regroup in good order. Torwain wheels to face the Wickerwood soldiers and releases a hurried shot into their rear. The crew wince in horror as the torsion arms snap forward and the shot sails over their target to land in the dirt right next to the Hammerheart Oathsworn. Autocratics has a rare moment of lucidity and, channeling the weave, enchants the Wormhewer's axes, which begin to drip thick black ichor. Yay, he did a thing! Suddenly aware he's a little exposed, he moves up the centre. Bronra the Crone pivots in reaction to Autocratics before advancing and binding magical threads with trace runes. The Wrath of Stormpeak find their skin taking on a grey hue and begin to harden as Bronra's Stoneheart spell takes effect. Moxis moves forward towards the battle. I'm sick of knocking him off the table. And sensing the strengthening weave, casts Revive on the Wormhewers, seeking to reanimate one of the fallen warriors. But the magic, fickle as always, slips from his grasp.
Blast!
The Stony Creek Watch run down the flank, wheeling to threaten the undead back line. Gangrenous Hex continues to procrastinate as the Wormhewers rush into the flank of the Hammerheart Oathsworn. Baridoc spots them coming and, moving to the flank, calls for the Oathsworn to form a shield wall, raising their defence to a whopping 13. The worm hewers batter at the dwarves hunkered behind their shield wall, 2 falling as their shields are pulled aside by axes, and a further falls as a minor scratch turns deadly, poison racking his body. The centre of the shield wall parts and Baridoc King lunges forth, Starsilver blade leading the way. Missing the opportunity to cut down the champion, Regrouping, he carves his way through the Revenant warriors, slaying 3 before falling back behind his bodyguard, cutting a 4th down as he goes. The Hamheart Oathsworn cheer at the display, holding firm despite casualties and churning guts. Superix gives his archer a moment to loose a handful of arrows at the Westslope spears, one of which finds flesh in a cry of pain. The remaining dwarves stay steady as Superix carefully wheels his chariot out of the woods he was forced into. The warriors of the catacombs charge once more into the hard-pressed Westslope spears, who retreat behind their shields. The Revenants strike, but their attacks are blunted by shield and helm. One of the second-rank dwarves claims Revenant, thrusting his spear over the shield to the front rank. The dwarves' firm resolve forcing the Revenants back.
Well done.
Turn 5 ends with the Storm Peak dwarves hammering the undead left, cutting swathes through the Revenants and skeletons, while holding firm on the right, if slowly being worn down. Their centre has been blown open and the undead still control the tower, while the other 2 objectives are still up for grabs.
Steady, lads. Hold them here. Join us in death.
Turn 6 initiative goes to Moxis with a 5. Seeking to buy time, Dictatorix commands Regrouping and the Wormhewers to hit the Oathsworn in the flank once more. As they charge in, Baridoc moves again to meet them. Blows are exchanged, but forgetting to press record on their scrying device, the gods make them do it all over again. The Revenants strike heavy blows with their axes, buckling plate and splitting mail. 3 dwarves fall. Baridoc's keen sword snakes out from under his shield, the Starsilver blade puncturing armour and splitting haft. He claims 3 Revenants in return. The Oathsworn remain firm as Baridoc cuts down a further Revenant, and the 2 sides back away from each other. As the Wormhewers engage, Dictatorix leads the Leviathan Guard into the wrath of Storm Peak, to be met once more by Vordic Grimhelm. The Revenants hit surprisingly hard, puncturing Lamellar's scale and hardened flesh, and causing 2 dwarves to drop. Vordic retaliates in kind, crushing 2 Revenants with his heavy maul. The dwarves jeer as Vordic crumples a further Revenant, and the 2 groups reform. The crew of Torwain quickly reload and launch another shot at the Wickerwood soldiers, their aim much more careful this time. 3 of the skeletons are smashed as the heavy stone ball crashes through their ranks. As he pulls around to charge again, Victorix tangles his reins and is forced to take a moment to right them, losing momentum. His archer companion looses arrows over his shoulder as he works, but the ancient shafts shatter off of mail and shield. The Westslope archers wheel back to loosen to the Wickerwood soldiers before they close the gap, but again their arrows prove ineffective. Shrugging off the scattering of arrows, the Wickerwood champion seizes an opportunity. Feigning a charge on the Westslope archers, he wheels his soldiers and falls upon Bronra the crone. As she spots the skeletons closing in, Bronra raises a mystical shield to halt their advance. The Wickerwood champion alone forces his way through the barrier, though it slows his assault.
Back, ye brute!
His bronze blade slashes down, and Bronra crumples to the ground, her own staff battering weakly at the skeleton soldiers before falling from her grasp. The Stony Creek Watch loose another ineffective volley into the Wormreach spears before rushing around their rear, closing in on juicier targets. The warriors of the catacombs, frustrated by the unyielding dwarves before them, take a moment to reassess their options and wheel a little. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, Myrddin elects to lead the Westslope Spears into the faltering revenants before him. He leads the way, clubbing one of the warriors to the ground with his mace of office, but the dwarven assault spurs the revenants into action. In a surprisingly furious counterattack, the revenants push into the moving ranks of the dwarves, splitting their previously solid formation apart and felling 3 spear dwarves. Myrddin's leadership keeps the remaining dwarves in good order as the revenants force them to regroup far from the ruins. Autocratix's moment of lucidity quickly passes and he wanders forward mindlessly. Gangrenous Hex, firmly seizing the elusive strands of magic, uses his spell focus ability to channel greater amounts of the weave into his reanimate spell. His single-minded focus succeeds in raising a single skeleton, like squeezing blood from a stone. Reinvigorated, the Wormreach Spears continue to hold. Superix continues to pull his chariot around and moves to support the undead left. The archer on the back of the chariot loosens an arrow over the Hammerheart Oathsworn. A warning shot. Moxis summons the energies for a fireball, launching it towards Torwain, only for the spell to detonate to the left of the target. Cursing loudly, he shuffles sideways. Turn 6 ends with the dwarf left being ground down, the ruins firmly held by the undead. The central Oathstone is still being contested by the Hammerheart Oathsworn, though only just. But the dwarves are likely to capture the archway, assuming they can activate the Wrath of Storm Peak in the next turn or two. Initiative on turn 7 goes to the dwarves. Baridoc King calls to the Westslope archers, commanding them to protect his flank, then wheels the Hammerheart Oathsworn and charges the Wormhewers head on. Leading the way, Baridoc aims for Rigor Mortis, shield high and Starsilver blade held low. Rigor Mortis unleashes a heavy downwards blow of his club towards Baridoc's crown, which the dwarf meets with his shield, beating the heavy weapon offline just enough that it slams into the earth beside him. As the club lands, he countercuts with the sword, the gleaming metal passing across Rigor Mortis, rising from thigh to hip and splitting the undead champion in 2. The Oathsworn hit the undead line, cutting down 2 further revenants in Baridoc's wake, though one of the warriors falls when a revenant's axe slams into his helm. Buoyed by their success, the Oathsworn cut down 2 further revenants, then drive the remainder back. The Westslope archers, heeding Baridoc's call, wheel and leap at Superix's chariot before he can charge the king.
Bring it down!
Attempting to climb the wicker frame or slaughter the horses, they are fought off by Superix or frustrated by the undead essence of the beasts.
There must be a weak point.
The dwarves in turn manage to avoid being struck by Superix's axe, and happy to have tied the chariot down for a moment, back away as Superix manoeuvres to make room. Victorix wheels his chariot back before making another run at the Westslope Spear's flank, Myrddin leading the defence. Victorix's spear lances out as he passes by, catching a single dwarf, the others starting to wise up to the new threat. Myrddin strikes at the chariot as it passes, but his mace bounces off the reinforced wheel. Nevertheless, his show heartens the remaining dwarves as they move away from the chariot, and Victorix circles around again. The Stony Creek Watch continue their mad dash around the undead flank, bringing Autocratix within range. Loosing aimed shots towards the Necromancer, magical shielding blocks some arrows, but 2 strike home, biting undead flesh, and cause the Necromancer to stumble in his daze.
Good shot, Garmund.
The warriors of the catacombs wheel and charge the Westslope Spears as they reform.
Raise your shields,
The
lads.
dwarves get their shields up as the undead hit their lines. Without the support of multiple ranks, the revenants are able to get among the spear dwarves and overwhelm them, leaving Myrddin Goldenrock standing alone. As the revenants overrun his position, he smashes one to the earth, before stoically giving ground. Surrounded by weakened undead units, the Wrath of Storm Peak are able to capture the archway for the Dwarven forces, before wheeling back and charging Dictatorix and the remaining Leviathan guard.
Clobber him!
Vorix Maul crushes through Dictatorix's block, beating the Revenant captain to the ground before crumpling the breastplate of the next Revenant in line. The other dwarves fall upon the remaining Revenant warrior. Their armour and hardened skin makes them impervious to the Revenant's weapons, and they emerge both victorious and unscathed. The Wickerwood soldiers, not quite close enough to Tordawain, wheel and charge the Westslope archers in the rear, the Wickerwood champion choosing to fight alone. He steps forward and cleaves two of the Dwarven archers, who are unable to land any telling blows in return. Pressed from the rear and with their numbers dwindling, the remaining Westslope archers begin to panic.
We cannot stop them!
Relieved at their momentary respite, Tordawain's crew lob a shot into the rear of the Wickerwood soldiers, smashing 3 skeletons to pieces. Gangrenous Hex continues to manipulate the weave. Gathering stronger energies, he successfully raises 2 skeleton spearmen from the Wormreach spears. Better late than never, I guess. Reinvigorated, the Wormreach spears about face and charge the flank of the Stony Creek Watch. Spears thrust over shields, but the nimble border guard managed to avoid their tips, though the shields blunt their counterattack. Autocratix, confused and distracted by the arrows piercing his flesh, continues to wander in a daze. Moxis eyes up the wavering Westslope archers, but distracted by the wanderings of Autocratix and the approaching Stony Creek Watch, fails to do more than shuffle warily to the side. Turn 7 ends with the undead dominant on the right flank, but the heavily armoured dwarves have crushed the left. The dwarves have captured the archway, while the undead continue to hold the ruins. The Oathstone remaining unclaimed, with only Superix in a position to capture, but blocked by the Hammerheart Oathsworn. It looks like we're headed for a draw, but let's play out the final turn.
What is that old fool doing?
The undead take the initiative on turn 8 with a 10 and 4. Superix surges forward with a flick of the reins, striking the Hammerheart Oathsworn in the flank, with Baridoc pushing through the ranks to meet him. Hacking down over the wicker railing, the momentum of the charge strengthening his blows, Superix cuts down 3 heavily armoured warriors as he passes by. But before he can circle around, Baridoc arrives, the sword of Starsilver snaking out. He strikes the wheel, shearing spokes and hub alike, and the chariot crashes to the ground, throwing Superix and his archer to the earth. Stunned from the impact, they are slow to rise, and Baridoc is upon them. Striking true, he leaves 2 headless corpses as he returns to his cheering ranks. Despite Baridoc's show, the Westslope archers still find themselves in a tenuous position, but do spot a rare opportunity. In his unfocused daze, Autocratix has wandered into their sights. Loosing a ragged volley at the Necromancer, an arrow strikes, and the Revenant caster collapses to the ground. Victorix, spotting an opportunity to get those bastards that damaged his ride, wheels and charges Tordawain and her crew. Rumbling past the engine itself, Victorix thrusts down with his spear, striking down the crew with ease. The Stony Creek Watch, unable to reach any of the Necromancers, wheel back and loosen the Wormreach spears. Passing through or skipping off dried bone, the arrows still manage to batter one of the skeletons to pieces. The warriors of the catacombs stalk forward, surrounding Murderden Goldenrock. They fall upon him from all sides, swords and axes rising and falling. Murderden holds them off for a moment before he's struck in the head from behind and collapses to the ground among the fallen Westslope Dwarves. The Wrath of Storm Peak wheel and charge around the archway into the rear of the Wormreach spears. Crashing into the thin line of skeletons, they initially bowl 4 over in their charge, the final being struck down as its spear slides off a laminar coat, no match for the furious dwarves. The Wickerwood champion hits the Westslope archers from behind once more, quickly striking down 2. The remainers putting up little fight, before running from the field, the Hammerheart Oathsworn watching them go, unconcerned.
To be honest, I don't blame them.
With just undead units left, the remaining Wormhewer holds his ground. Gangrenous reanimates one of the fallen Wickerwood soldiers, and Moxis fails to activate once more. Turn 8 ends in a draw. What a bloodbath.
Curses, he was supposed to drive them from the field. Never mind, he's kept them occupied. Gangrenous, time is of the essence. Raise what you can and make for the river before the dwarves recover and pursue. I must make for the laboratory with all haste.
Oh, that did not go well. That necromancer has learned a trick or two. Oric, check on the Westslope Dwarves. Bring me Lord Goldenrock and the Crone, Bronera. Magni, see if you can round up the recruits from Golden Fields. The rest of you, get the wounded and honoured dead to the aid carts. We need to pull back and lick our wounds.
Alright, let's roll some dice for our legendary characters. So, our characters. So, Murden Goldenrock had a bad time. That's putting it mildly. Let's grab a blue dice for him. So, we're rolling on the legendary heroes and death chart. So, let's give it a go. A 7, he has flesh wounds. He survived. Good on him. Bronner the Crone also had a very bad time. Let's give her a roll. 9, flesh wounds. She is fine. She managed to escape. On the undead side, we have Autocratics, who was shot down. Right, we'll make a roll for him. 1 Autocratics is dead. Fully and finally dead. Rigamortix, the Revenant Champion, needs to roll. A 10, flesh wounds. He is absolutely fine and managed to escape. Dictatorix, the Revenant Captain, gets to roll. With a 1, he is also dead. And that is it for characters, isn't it? So we've got Superix running on the destroyed units and battle on his table. With a 1, completely destroyed. God, no luck here. The Leviathan Guard were completely wiped out, so we'll make a roll for them. Also destroyed. And the Wormhewers had 1 model left, so adding 1 to the dice roll. With a 7, they're fine. They'll be back next time. Well, that was rough. It's been a while since I've played, and it showed, but I think that mostly went fairly well. It was Mox's game to lose. If he'd focused on defending the archway instead of trying to destroy the Westslope spears, he could have stopped the dwarves from capturing it and won. But he didn't. Totally Mox's fault. But Torgrim's beard! Baridoc was a machine! Do not piss that dwarf off! Thank you very much to my supporters on Patreon. Your continued support is very, very much appreciated. And I do hope you have all enjoyed this episode, both parts of it. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.
Bronra, blah, 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 blah. Bronra, blah. Bronra the Crone, Privets, Bronra, damn it.